Hello, Hourlings. Welcome to After Hours with me, Jimmy Thistle. Excuse me. We are coming up to the end of winter, so I just wanted to put a little note on to say my Sober Seasons group, which is it's a kind of challenge or a support group on Facebook for people that want to do more than say your Dry January or your Stoptober. It goes for 3 months, so it's from the equinoxes or the solstices. So winter was from the 21st of December up until the 31st of March, and from 31st of March, which I think is in like 7-8 days or something. So that will be the start of Sober Spring. So if you want to join the group, anyone's welcome. Sober Curious, anyone that wants to kind of have a new kind of way of life, or just really wants to get some support and ideas on stopping drinking alcohol. So yeah, look on my link tree on my Instagram, and I will be posting stories with the link on Instagram closer to the date as well. But yeah, just hit me up with a request and we'll and I'll accept your request. So yeah, thanks guys. Tonight we've got an amazing empowered woman from across the pond. She lives in Oregon in the United States, and Marissa is a renowned leader in the female empowerment movement and a dedicated advocate for women in leadership. She's also the CEO and visionary of No Girl Left Behind organisation. She drives global initiatives that inspire and empower women through transformative workshops and events. Also, she's the founder of Inspire with Marissa, where her motivational speaking empowers women to reach their highest potential. And she was honoured in the P.O.W.E.R's 2024 Women of Empowerment. Marissa serves on Linfield University's Board of Advisors. Her expertise in leadership and resilience has been featured in prominent publications inspiring women to overcome barriers and lead with purpose. So, you know, I'd done a little bit of research into Marissa before, you know, kind of asking her on the show to have a conversation. But I really wasn't expecting kind of what Marissa's story was. It's just you know, from such a kind of early life of promise and talent, to just then slip into a kind of downward spiral very early on. So yeah, sit back and enjoy the ride. It is a tale of, or a story of kind of darkness, but there is hope and light at the end, along with, you know, kind of all of my stories and my guests on here. So yeah, you know, there are some trigger warnings, so just take care when listening to this episode. So now here's Marissa. Thanks guys. Marissa, welcome to After Hours with Jimmy Thistle. How are you today?
I'm fabulous.
Good. So this is the first one I'm doing like across the pond. So just tell us where you're at in the world at the moment.
I'm in the United States. I reside in Oregon on the West Coast. We
Nice.
are right above California.
Yeah, Oregon's one of those places that I suppose Oregon, Stand By Me was based. I think Stephen King bases a lot of his books around that kind of area, does he? Or am
There
I
are a
completely
lot
wrong?
of films that are made here because
Yeah.
I have, the mountains, the ocean. It's fabulous. It's gorgeous. I know The Shining was filmed here, and that was like pretty famous,
Of
right? With
course, yeah, the Outlook
yeah,
Hotel
an
and all.
older one. It's aging myself, um, but
Well,
yeah, there's
yeah,
a
so
few. In fact, my daughter and I think it was in Oregon, Washington, somewhere like here on the West Coast,
mhm.
portions of the vampire series. What's it called?
Oh,
I should know that.
there's so many,
The
isn't there?
one, Team Jake, Team whatever. You know what I'm talking about? Oh, what's that? The franchise. It's huge.
Not
The
not
vampire.
Buffy, not Buffy. I mean, I'm going
Oh
back.
no. Oh my God,
Oh,
it's on the
the Twilight Saga.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
there's
yeah,
a
yeah.
high school, I believe, here. It's somewhere on this West Coast. It's like on the border
Uh-huh.
somewhere here. Me and my daughter visited years ago, but the high school that they filmed that movie at was here, local.
Wow, wow.
Yeah. Lots of
Okay,
cinema
okay.
attraction.
So it's one of those places in the US that I've always wanted to visit. So I will get round to kind of getting over there to at some point. You know, I mean, I think a lot of people it's California or it's Florida. I've been to New York and Connecticut, but definitely kind of places like Montana and Oregon. That's the kind of places that I want to kind of
Yeah,
get
it's gorgeous. You should.
out
And
in.
where are you located?
So I'm from Scotland originally, and I now live in the Isle of Man. So I don't know if you if you looked into where that is on the map. If you put if you put the Great Britain, including like Ireland and Northern Ireland, on the map, the Isle of Man is right in the center. So it's right in the middle of the Irish Sea. It's a little island, right in the middle of the Irish Sea. So we've got a lot of kind of Celtic and Viking kind of heritage going on here. So me being Scottish, we've got the Celtic ancestry as well. So it feels like home to me. And yeah, this place is what got me sober. So yeah, so let's get into that. So I like it to be kind of, you know, your podcast. So like let's talk about whatever you kind of want to talk about. But what I like to do is kind of, you know, find out what your childhood was like and when you had your first drink, Marissa.
Yeah. Wow. No one's ever started like that. I like that. That's interesting.
Okay.
Like a unique question.
Yeah.
My childhood was phenomenal. My mom was a nurse and my dad worked in law for the state, and I was a gymnast. I was enrolled at the age of 3, and
Wow.
I did it almost 15 years. I competed nationally.
Oh,
Um, Gosh, in elementary school, I started doing pageants. Actually, in 1994, I was Miss Kaiser, and that's the city I reside in now today.
wow.
Um,
Okay. Yeah.
and yeah, I was after gymnastics, after I retired in 97, I started cheerleading and did that with high school.
Hmm.
Um, I had a few colleges that were interested at the time that I was a junior, I'd say.
Hmm.
And then my life took a little bit of a drastic turn.
Okay.
Um,
So how old were you when that kind of happened, when the drastic turn happened? I mean, what like I'm guessing all of these universities and colleges and schools were interested for scholarship wise for your kind of
Gymnastics,
gymnastics.
cheerleading, and
Yeah. Yeah.
academics and athletics and things like that. Life was on a good track. What happened is my my mom remarried. Well, my mom met a man when I was, I think, 12.
Hmm.
Um, and he he just I have to be careful here. He just his lot in life was to make my life hell,
Oh,
basically.
right.
Um, and so, he never like assaulted me or anything like that, because I don't want people to assume that. He
Hmm.
just he really tried to drive a wedge between my mother and I. And so by the time I was like 16, I really was alone. I mean, she had a new relationship and they were having fun. They were taking trips to Mexico, and I just found myself home alone a lot.
So at
And no one,
16, they were going on these trips without you, and
yeah.
and do you have
So
any
I mean,
siblings or anything?
I had a baby brother. I mean,
Okay.
when I was 9, she had a boy with my father before she remarried. Um, so it was me and my brother, but it was looking back, it was a whirlwind mentally because I had such a perfect little bubble, like a safety
Mhm.
net of family and, extracurricular activities and academics and everything just kind of was on the right track. And then he just put a spoke in the wheel, and it got me to a place where I guess I would say, I was rebelling, and I was also probably pleading for attention
Yeah.
looking back. And so I ended up, meeting some people that gave me attention that weren't the right people. And I ended up getting into drugs, and I
Hmm.
ended up running away from home. And for that first gosh, if I try to do the timeline in my head, I was 17 when I ran away.
Right.
And that summer, the summer that I was 17, things really took a bad turn. And I just got real deep real fast. And that's just my personality. I go 150% Mach 10 on everything I do, regardless of what it is. I'm all in.
Yeah.
Um,
Um,
and so, once I was in that world and you know, I I navigated myself into some pretty sticky situations and into some deep, dark circles that a normal person probably wouldn't have found themselves in. But again, I tend to go down the most challenging path because I think I can conquer it, and that's just my personality, good
sure.
or bad. Just I'm all in, I guess, and that's why drinking alcohol doesn't work for me. But August of that year, I was in I got kind of set up into something I didn't realize how bad it was because I'd been doing ventures like this before,
Hmm.
just living in the criminal world and the bad side of the world. But this one was different. I ended up getting swarmed, and I was the last one standing. I was the last person standing. I was the only one to blame. Um, which looking back now kind of teaches me, I learned so much about trust and when a push comes to shove, when things get really, really bad, like who has your back,
Hmm.
and who are the people that truly have your back. That's one of the things I talk about with my coaching and stuff. But um, I ended up getting arrested. I was arrested for 7 felonies. What made it so bad is one of the charges was attempted manslaughter. And they decided because I was so close to my 18th birthday,
Hmm.
and there was a lot of evidence left on the scene when everyone fled, and I was the only one standing, and I was the only one to blame, that painted a very bad picture. And so I ended up taking a plea bargain and taking 3 of the lesser charges. But again, I was 17,
Yeah.
and I have an 18-year-old now, and I can't even, it's so weird for me to wrap my head around what happened because I kept it a secret for about 20 years. I was very ashamed of it, and I never
Yeah.
told a single soul. My family knew what happened,
Yeah.
but I never shared it because I had a vision of myself, and that wasn't a part of it. So I just kept it very hidden.
Hmm.
And not until I quit drinking, I think I'm close to like 2.5 years ish.
Yeah.
But when I quit drinking, it was in that first year of sobriety that I spoke about it on a podcast, and the feedback was like, no, you got to really tell people what happened to you because I think that plays a part in, why it was so hard for you to drink alcohol like everyone else. You were dealing with a lot of things that you'd never resolved. I never took the time to really deal with what happened to me. I just erased it. I shoved it down. So anyway, rewind. I
Yeah.
don't want to blab. So I got arrested. I took the plea bargain, and then I just took that as that was the card I was dealt. That was the life I was destined for, right? To live on the streets with these terrible people that put me in terrible situations, and this was life. And it wasn't until I crossed paths with a certain law enforcement person, and that was a shining light. He said some things to me that made me seek out legal help and see if there
Hmm.
was anything that I could do because it was such a unique case. It wasn't like I had this huge rap sheet. My rap sheet before that day was completely clean.
Yeah.
And so, with the advice of the legal people that I reached out to and the law enforcement person, I did find that there was hope. They explained to me that because of the severity of some of the charges that were on my record now, I had to go through some different paths and take some classes and pay some fees.
Hmm.
um, but there was hope. And so that was, I think I had been in that world about 3 years when I decided to do that. So I left that world. I went and I found my dad and I said, I want help. I want to turn my life around. I'm not meant for this kind of a life. And he opened up his door. I saved up money. I got a job. I got my own apartment. I ended up having my first child. It took a little over 10 years and I got everything removed from my record from that day.
Wow. Okay. And did you do
And
did
so
you do any time or anything like that at that
no,
point?
no,
No.
because it was the charges that I mean, I had to go in several times, but I
Yeah.
never to stay a stent. I was always released. The manslaughter charges weren't violent charges. It was because of the things that I had on my person. I had like I think 12 different types of narcotics,
Right.
and the big one was there were vials of liquid morphine, and the dose in each vial was what they said it looked like intent to harm because the doses and there was no prescription.
But
But I mean, being
that's like
yeah,
saying to someone if you're carrying like a kilo of cocaine, do you know what I mean? I'm not saying everyone does that, but of course that's going to kill a person, but it doesn't mean that they're
right,
planning on giving it to
right.
someone all at once.
Yeah.
Of course not.
And so, I mean, I didn't even really realize what I had on me on that day, but I knew I had a bag of terrible things because I was hanging around terrible people. And,
And they were
you
looking
know,
to blame someone, so
they
you're,
just
as you
needed
say, you're
someone.
last one
They even
standing
said, we're going to make an example out of you
at
because I
17,
had
at 17, like
17.
your whole life
Yeah,
ahead of you.
cheerleader.
Yeah.
Like it was wild. But being 17, I didn't understand the severity of it when I accepted the charges. I didn't even really understand a lot of the verbiage that they were explaining to me. I
And
just
who
went,
would? Who would? Do you know what I mean? Unless you're like a seasoned, criminal from
yeah, one of the
13, of
charges
course you're
was
not going to know that.
intent to distribute criminal instruments. And like I was like, what do I have on me? I
Yeah.
mean, but now that I'm an adult, I understand what they were doing.
Um,
Because I was the last one there. I was the
yeah.
only man standing. In fact, I can still very graphically picture the last car speeding away and leaving me there. So that
And
all
so you've
happened.
managed to get your life, 10 years and all that, and get that all expunged from your record, but you still have that vision in your head of that car leaving you. So that's
Oh,
obviously,
there was so much
traumatic.
PTSD that it left me with. I was just talking on another podcast about how once you're in that world and you're in raids and, you're swarmed by FBI and you see that side of the coin, you kind of live in this, you're always a little cautious,
Yeah.
even when you're not doing anything wrong because you just know what's out there.
Yeah.
And I speak to the story about when I was young in my 20s. I swore that I saw someone watching me through the window, and everyone thought I was crazy. They told me I was paranoid because I had left that world. I was a completely
Mhm.
functional adult of society. I had a job, I had my own place, I had a child, and everyone told me I was crazy. And one day I got a phone call, and I had to go into a sheriff's office to deal with some stuff from my past that had resurfaced.
Mhm.
And he said, I have been sitting in the parking lot of that restaurant outside of your apartment with binoculars to verify some things that we have on record. And I was like, I knew it. I knew it. I wasn't paranoid.
No, but
I
how is that even legal for them to be doing that? I mean, I know they're
it
in
was
law
a fraud
enforcement,
investigation.
but still, it's
And
like,
I hadn't done anything wrong, but they had
yeah,
to verify. Again, because of what was on my record,
yeah.
it painted a picture that I was this, doing all these crazy things, and I wasn't.
Hmm.
But some stuff resurfaced from another investigation, and it brought up my name, and it was like, oh, let's see what she's doing. She might be linked to this. And so it was an undercover investigation.
Yeah.
But,
But you
I
weren't
mean,
you weren't paranoid. You had actually seen someone, so
yeah, and so I mean, here I am, 25 years after everything happened, and I don't have that kind of sense anymore, but it's just taught me to be very, very aware of my
yeah,
surroundings and what could happen, even if it doesn't look like something could happen. I'm just very cautious. Kind of like how they say like there's some people that are always like looking for the exits or,
mhm,
checking their surroundings. Like I've just kind of adopted this like, you know,
yeah, yeah.
for
Scan the
lack of a
room.
better way, like a traffic air controller. I'm just always kind of checking my surroundings, I
But I
feel like.
guess, I guess in a way, similarly, if I go into a room of people that I don't know, I can kind of tell who I want to be
Mhm.
friends with and who I definitely want to steer clear of, just from
Yeah.
my kind of, and it's a good tool to have in life to be able to do that because I guess in my younger days I was very, very trusting of everyone and anything,
Yeah.
mostly because I was probably drunk most of the time anyway, so I could just, I was looking for the next party and things like that. So I would trust everyone, and it's a much better way of life to be not so trusting of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, to go back to the original question, what was my childhood like and when did I
Mm.
take my first drink? I just kind of had to explain that it didn't start with alcohol.
Yeah.
When I was 17, I went into a really bad place and I spent about 3 years in that place and then I turned my life around. So once I got everything removed from my record, I applied for my first entry-level job in fashion.
Okay.
And a very kind woman gave me a shot with no experience. I started like as an overnight merchandiser type of thing. And then I just worked my way up as quick and as hard as I could, through networking and further education and, doing a ton of research and just, I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to help people. And once I got that first job in fashion, it became really evident to me that I wanted to help people level up in their careers. I had a
Hmm.
passion for customer service and for team building and things like that. And I always had. I'd always been a leader, like even in the, like campfire girls and like
Yeah.
gymnastics and
Yeah.
dance and all those things. Um, so it was natural to me. It was organic to want to help lead teams. And so after about 5 years and several promotions, I found myself running regions. And so, gosh, in my late 20s, early 30s, um, I was running market and branding and awareness for about 55 cities for a corporate company. And
Right.
I loved it. Traveling all over, I was meeting VPs and founders. I was part of large acquisitions. It was fun for me. I was thriving in that environment, but I'd still never dealt with the past.
Mm.
It was still a secret that I just erased from existence. I just pretended it never happened because I was now the person that I always envisioned. I
Yeah.
had become what I had always wanted, and so why bring up that past?
Sure.
And so I'd say COVID was a big part of when my drinking got really bad. I'd always kind of drank here and there.
Hmm.
But when COVID hit, it caused me to shift in my career. Everyone
Hmm.
had to go through that. And having four kids that weren't in school and, having my career be shifted,
Yeah.
I started to drink more.
Yeah.
And it was a slow progression. And by 2021, I'd say I was just like the end of 2021, I was just miserable. I mean, I was drinking every day after work, partying on the weekends, and it was normal
Yeah.
because everyone had done it. And COVID kind of made it like, I remember posting things about like, we're drinking at 8 a.m. or whatever, like because it's COVID and we're quarantined and everyone's doing it. Like it
Yeah.
was the thing to do.
Well, it was.
And then
I
the
was seeing like memes where people were. It was like how to get away with drinking at your Zoom meeting. So they had like a teacup, and it had one of those, like the tea bag kind of handle that's coming out of it, and it was like just sellotape that to the inside of the glass, and then fill your teacup full of wine. And it was like, these were
yeah,
memes, and everyone was laughing about it. But the more and
yeah,
more people that were cracking open bottles of wine whilst they were still at work at like 2 o'clock, and
yeah.
we didn't just have a pandemic of COVID, we had a pandemic of like binge drinking and problem area drinking. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So by 2022, I had I believe totaled my minivan once.
Oh,
Uh, I had gosh, I was the heaviest I'd ever been.
and were you, sorry, are you married? Were you married at this point?
Yeah, my husband and I have been together 25 years.
Right, sure, sure. So and
I actually, if we do the reference in the timeline, I was 17 when all that stuff happened to me, and I
mhm.
was 17 when I met him.
Okay, cool, cool. Yeah.
And that's a very interesting story, actually, because we met through a mutual friend, and he's probably going to kill me that I'm telling this story. It's sweet. He was visiting, he lived in another state, and we spent about a week together.
Uh-huh.
And then he went back home and we lost touch. There was no such thing as cell phones.
Hmm.
And so I came home one day after him being gone for a little while, and there was a note on my father's door. I still lived with my father that said, I moved to Oregon to be with you. Please call me at your earliest convenience.
Wow.
And I think the story, yeah, I went and hung out, and then I went back and got my stuff, and I moved in with him that night.
See, I
Yeah.
I love stories like
And
that. That's amazing. Yeah.
and here we are 25 years later with four kids. I mean,
Yeah.
we've had definitely had our ups and downs,
Yeah.
but I've been sober now for over 2 years, and he's
Mhm.
been sober a little over a year.
Oh wow, so he's joined you as well then. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because I finally, I mean, I told him whenever he went sober, I said, I'm having so much fun. It's like I'm on
Mhm.
this whole other ride of life. Like I'm on a whole other seat on the roller coaster, and I want you on my seat, you know?
Mhm.
Uh, and so he was going to give it a shot and do like a 30-day thing.
Mhm.
And then he just started feeling so good. And then instead of cracking a beer after work, he would go on a bike ride. So
Mhm.
now he bikes between like 25 and 30 miles a day after work, every day, rain or shine. I mean, even in the snow, I'm telling you, it's insane. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, we changed our habits and we changed, what we were doing every day after work. And so now things are completely different. It's a whole new life. But, back to the original
Yeah.
question, it
Sorry.
was
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
COVID. No, 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 it was me. I
Well,
blabbed.
we both digress. It's good though. This is what it's all about. It's just a chat, So
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
So 2022, I wouldn't say that was I had my first drink because, I drank, I'm married to a Russian,
Right.
he's Russian.
Vodka.
So, I
Vodka
mean,
is.
I've been around alcohol. We drank. I don't know when I took my first drink, but when the drink got to be too much, when I was drinking too much for my own good, I'd say it was my late 30s. I think getting close to my 40s was also a big factor in it.
Mhm.
The closer my 40th birthday got, I thought, my God, like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I can't have the second half be mom drunk all the time after work and
Yeah.
on the weekends. Like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
I didn't build this to sink it.
Mhm.
I worked so hard to get here. And so what really helped me was in sobriety, I reached out and I've formed so many friends on social media through sobriety. I mean, you.
Well, yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah,
this is what it's about.
there's
I love it. Love it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And God, there's so many people in my life that have quit drinking after the momentum and the movement. Just,
Yeah.
acquaintances and friends, and I get DMs all the time from people I've known my whole life that are trying or have quit or want to quit. And so, it's a definite need. But in sharing my story, it gave me the confidence to finally kind of talk about what happened to me at 17.
Yeah.
And then I started co-authoring a book. It's coming out in May. Yeah, volume one is April, and then I'm volume two, I believe, in May. And writing, because I'm a
Mhm.
chapter in the book, and my chapter is in detail, graphic detail, what happened that day,
Okay.
why it happened, how I got there, a little bit about my past, and then what happened afterwards and how I got to where I am today.
Hmm.
And writing that really helped me come to terms with like, I never dealt with it. I never even thought about what that did to me mentally or, how I got through it. Like, how did I really go from, being 17, charged with these crazy felonies and thrown in a jail cell, let back out and told, this is your life now.
Yeah.
You're a
And
felon.
also
Yeah.
from being like, competing nationally in gymnastics to be looking to doing that and then thinking, where did I take this turn, and what
Yeah.
happened? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was all, I mean, just in writing the book, it's helped me be able to talk about it and kind of really see. I think part of the reason I went down such a deep hole with alcohol after COVID hit is because I had all these things I'd never dealt with,
Yeah.
and I just kept numbing them and putting them in the gray area. So when in sobriety, they really came up to the surface, and it's allowed me, to write it out and think it out and share it, and come to terms with, no one to blame, who to blame,
Hmm.
where to put the blame, because you can't blame anyone for what happened. And that gentleman that was my stepfather for I think 10 or 11 or 12 years or something like that.
Hmm.
He's not, he's passed away. Um, but I do remember the last thing he said to me, actually. It was years after. I mean, I was an adult. I was working in corporate. I was successful.
Hmm.
Was like at a barbecue or something. Like he ended up through a mutual friend of the family. I ran into him there and I hadn't seen him in years.
And he wasn't still with your mother at this point then. Yeah.
No, not for years. No, no,
Yeah.
no. But he did come up to me and he asked me how much money I made. That was the only thing. And I'm telling you, so the day I met him, I should tell you this about him.
Uh-huh.
The day I met him, I came home from school and there was a stranger in my house who I'd never met, unbeknownst to my mom. And he said, I'm your mom's boyfriend. This is my house now.
Oh
That was
my.
the first sentence he said to me.
So the thing
And
was,
then the
what you were saying earlier, sorry, he sounded like he wanted your mum all to himself and he couldn't care less
Mhm.
what you were
There
doing or
was a
where you
day where
were.
I came home from school when my mom was out of town for work, and all my belongings were on the front yard.
What?
And I was in high school by then, and I came home and I was like, "What's going on?" And he's like, "Yep, you don't live here anymore. Find somewhere to stay." And I couldn't get a hold of my mom. She didn't have any service where she was traveling. I ended up going and staying with my grandma. But what am I going to do?
What are
Like
you going to
he
do?
wouldn't
Start
let me in
fighting
the
with
house.
him? Yeah.
Yeah, his lot in life was to make my life hell. But the very last sentence he said to me, so that was the first sentence, this is
Hmm.
my house now. And the very last sentence he said to me was he asked me how much money I made. And I told him, and he said, "Wow, I can't believe that. I never thought you'd amount to anything." That was the last thing he said to me. And then I heard he passed away. Yeah.
He sounds like a prize prick, excuse my language, but yeah.
But I can't blame, I'm not blaming anyone. I could have dealt with things differently.
yeah. I
Well,
mean,
that's
what
part
does
of the reason
blame?
I'm so passionate about this female empowerment event now is
Yeah, yeah.
because I want girls and women to understand you have options, you have a voice, you
Hmm.
are important, and sometimes, and a lot of times, it's your own situations, your personal situations that are causing the most havoc in your life. And how do you navigate that when you come home and you're coming home to those types of things? So building a network of empowered women that can help young girls feel empowered and stay connected to them if
Hmm.
they need help, because imagine if when that day that my stuff was on the front yard, like if I had a network of someone I could have called and said, "Hey, what do I do?" You
Yeah.
know, maybe, who knows? But that's why now being able to tell my story and come to terms with what happened, it's helping me really share the message with as many people as I can. Because my whole message is every time in my life I was set on the right track,
Hmm.
it was a person that was kind of like a beacon of light. Like one person that crossed my paths and changed my life forever. Every time I navigated back to the right path, it
Hmm.
was a person. So it was the law enforcement guy. In my career, it was a career coach that I had. And it was no other, I mean, because you can choose your career coach or they can choose you. But in this instance, this person said, "I see a lot in you. I want to coach you. I want to travel with you and I want to teach you everything I know." So he was another beacon of light. So with everything that happened, I feel like the universe has put me in all these situations to where, and now I've got this platform of No Girl Left Behind. Like I can be a beacon of light for hundreds of people at a time instead of one at a time. It's
Yeah.
kind of how I'm taking what happened to me and turning it into something good rather than this was horrible. I'm going to blame everyone for what happened to me?
Yeah, because blame, I mean, what does it do? You can sit there and blame someone, but it doesn't change anything, does it? It really just makes you more kind of bitter and resentful to people, but it doesn't actually change what's happened. It's more about moving on, and with what you're doing with your ventures is helping so many people do that. So we'll go into that in a bit. So let's get back. You totaled your VW van, did you say, in COVID?
I totaled my van once. Yeah.
Yeah, and then how did it escalate and what was the kind of crunch point for you that you kind of thought, you know
Oh,
what?
that wasn't even a rock bottom.
No.
Um, no, that was a drop in the bucket. I mean, after everything I'd been through, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, that's like yeah,
Uh,
whatever.
and I didn't get a DUI. There was a bunch of things that happened.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I don't even, yeah, it wasn't a rock bottom at all. I think for me, and what I talk about is what made me quit drinking is I had a vision of myself since
Mhm.
I was a very little girl. And I always knew that one day I would step into that vision. I just didn't know when, but I knew. And I think holding on to the hope that I knew, it's like I never gave up hope that I could live at my fullest potential. I just didn't know how I was going to get there. And so, you know how they always say, like I would say in my head for years that I want to quit drinking.
Mm.
Like you wake up and you say, "I'm not going to drink today," you
Yeah.
know? Um, and it was just years of that, years and years and years of knowing that I could be my best if I didn't drink, but just not being able to not have a glass of wine after work, or a cocktail on the weekend or whatever it was. But I had a conversation with my children one night, and I speak to this on all my stuff, so it might sound redundant if you've listened to other podcasts, but we never talked about drinking that night. we talked more about just life in general and stressors and what you're going through and if life could be better.
Hmm.
But what I focus on in that night, it was like the universe literally sent me glimpses of how to fix things, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
It was like I could see my children's lives in the future if I drank and if I didn't drink. Like I could actually see, I could literally see like what they would look like, the
Like
difference in what they would
the
look like
two
in my
paths,
life.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was almost like in that conversation with them, having a full breakdown, personal conversation with them. Um, I saw that the only thing I needed to do to get them to full capacity, because my whole thing is I want to be at full capacity. And that's what I kept leaning on when I was pleading with myself. You
Hmm.
can be at full capacity if you quit drinking. But that was the first time where the universe was like, it hit me in the face like a ton of bricks. And it was like, they can be at full capacity if you quit drinking. Like,
Yeah.
look at what you're doing. Like, their lives will be different, much different if you continue to drink wine all the time or cocktails
Mhm.
or whatever. Um, their quality of life could be 150% better if I wasn't a mom that drank. And
Yeah.
so that was that night after I remember coming out of the room from that conversation and telling my husband immediately after I left the room, I'm never drinking again. I don't want to drink again. My children's lives can be so much better if I don't drink. So then I thought, I know that that was what I was waiting for because no longer was I pleading for myself to be at my best capacity. It was
Hmm.
about them.
Yeah.
And for me, that was the final, that was all I needed. Here's four little humans whose lives I can change for the better by just not picking up a glass and pouring the liquid down my throat. And how easy would that be to do? How shameful to even think that that liquid is more important than their quality of life, right? It was a huge wake up call that night. And so I went out and I thought, I've got to keep my hand busy, my eyes busy, because I was so used to that glass in my hand after work.
Hmm.
So I went out and I bought a ton of kombucha and like seltzer water. Like I stocked my fridge with non-alcoholic stuff so that I could have something in my hand for those first few days because I knew it was going to be hard.
Hmm.
I mean, if you're a person that drinks every day after work, like it's so routine, you know it's going to be hard for years.
And it's a
And I
drug. It's a drug. So, regardless of how much you're actually drinking, it's a habit and you have some form of habitual dependence on it as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I went out and I laugh now about it, but I went out and I bought like a stack of adult coloring books and like
Yeah.
fancy bougie adult pens and pencils, but I thought, it's such a small investment for me to just be able to keep myself centered those
Yeah.
first few days, weeks, months, whatever it takes. And it took I think I want to say a few months of that kind of like come home and I'd sit at the island in our kitchen and I'd pop open the book and I'd pop open a non-alcoholic thing and I'd just sit there and participate in the family and like they knew like mom's just trying to get through this.
Yeah.
But after a few months, I didn't need to do that anymore. I put away the coloring books and I could just sit down and hang out. I'd still have like a something in my hand, like a seltzer water or something. But then like a month of that, and it's like, okay, I don't even need that crutch anymore. Like I feel
Hmm.
normal. I finally feel like myself again. Um, and now, 2.5 years later, I don't even think about it. I
Yeah.
don't even, in fact, I can't even imagine drinking. I just feel like it would. I was telling my husband what for me, um, like what it does to your body, how it like heats up your body, like when you take a shot, like it
Hmm.
like burns your throat and that warmth you get in your cheeks and your face and um for me, it's that I think of that feeling and it just feels the thought of it sounds so awful because I
Yeah.
have chronic hives and I've had them my whole life. But heat and viruses make me flare up. But alcohol was a big thing for me, the bloating and the flare-ups and the swelling and the redness and just all the yucky stuff that comes
Yeah.
with like, why would you do that to
Why?
yourself? No.
It's
So when
so
I think of
bizarre.
that, it just feels so gross.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine putting
I mean, the
myself
thing
through.
is, like going back, you're saying about, you know, like you're basically being able to give your kids a better life without you drinking. And it's all it is giving up one thing. But that one thing that we're giving up, what did it actually do for us? That's the bizarre
Yeah.
thing that I'm now trying to think back, and I'm like, I just fell into this pattern of socially accepted kind of pastime that we all kind of do, and it's just expected of people in our culture today that this is what you do. You know, you go to the theater, you go to an event, you go to a show, there's drinks available, so we all drink, you know, like at weddings, funerals, birthdays, it's just always there. But what does it actually do for us apart from, and I don't get me wrong, I know there's a few people that will have a couple of drinks and then they'll go home and they probably won't drink for a month or so. But a lot of people that are just, you know, they'll go to these things and then they're just thinking, you know, beer after beer, wine after wine. And yeah, as you say, you know, it bloats you, it gets your skin all horrible, and it's poisoning you. And now they've linked it to
Mhm.
like 7 types of cancer. That needs to be on the bottles, you know, because
Yeah.
people don't seem to realize just how much of a danger it is. And it's bizarre why we fall into that trap. You know, I'm like you. I can't imagine ever drinking again. For a long time, I did the fellowship, and it was like, it was one day at a time, and never say never. But for today, I won't drink. But I'm kind of past that now, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm never going to drink again because I have no
Yeah,
ink.
I mean, I don't know, maybe because like I know my grandma was sober
Yeah,
and but she would drink like in her old age, she'd have like a glass of wine on Christmas and we'd all like laugh at her because she'd get so queasy. So like maybe when I'm 80, I mean, I don't know, like you said, never say never, but
yeah,
I feel like everything I do now at this age and for the next 20, 30, 40 years, whatever, when I think of how much fun I can have more fun without alcohol.
yeah.
So I don't want to add that into the mix. Yeah, it's just life is more fun.
It's
You know,
it's
there's
interesting when I first moved there, and I live in a little cottage up in the hills, and the sun's going down now. And I remember when I'd first moved in here, and I was only like, I think I was nearly a year sober, and I was looking at this beautiful sunset, and I was like, and in my head it popped in, and it was like, wouldn't this be so much better with a glass of wine or a beer? And then I was like, but why would it be better? Because all I'd be doing is numbing my senses by having that. And I'm seeing
yeah,
this without any filters, so I'm seeing it for what it really
yeah.
is. And it's just so bizarre to think that we think in our society that we need these drinks to, enhance the experience, and it doesn't.
And I think to your point, how you said, like, why do we do this to ourselves?
Yeah.
For me, I was so unhappy with myself and who I'd become and what my values were and the way I was living that I just wanted to erase it. Like, I'd get home from work and I just wanted to drink so much that I didn't have to be in reality. I
Mm,
wanted to step out of reality. And I feel like a lot of people use drinking as a crutch to just step out of their own reality that they're not happy with,
mhm.
and it's kind of sad when you're on the other side and you see it. You see people that drink all the time and it's like what are they escaping? What are they graying? What are they filtering? What are they trying to escape from? Because the only reason you put yourself in a different state of mind. Like, why step out of reality? The only reason to step out of reality with a drink or a drug or whatever it is because
Mhm.
there's something in your reality that you're not happy with. And
Yeah.
so once you can see it from that perspective, you just you don't judge people so much. Like I always tell people that are really struggling to get sober, like give yourself some grace. It took me years.
Yeah.
It's not like the very first time you think, oh, I have a problem, you're going to be able to quit the next day. So don't beat yourself up.
Mm,
Just know that once you can acknowledge that you have a problem, figure out what is it in your reality that you're trying to escape, whether it's, your career or your marriage or how much you drink. I mean, what is it in your reality that you're trying to escape? And then kind of dig a little deeper. Or like the why game. I use it with coaching a lot when you teach people to say, they're complaining about something, like what's the root cause? I'm unhappy with my career. Why? Well, because
mhm.
of this. Why? Like you literally say why 20 times and it'll eventually get you down to the very root of why. And then that might help you figure out why are you drinking so much? Oh, let's remedy that. And then maybe I won't need the alcohol, you
Yeah.
know?
I like that because I was an escapist drinker, and it wasn't happy with my lot in my life, and but I couldn't see that when I was drinking, and okay, I was escaping for whatever amount of time I was drunk, but then the next day I'd wake up, all my problems were still there, but now I had a new one because I was
Mhm.
drinking too much and I was losing jobs and losing partners and things like that. But then it was the only solution I could see was to continue to drink. But I would always come back to reality for those short spaces of time, you know. And towards the end, it was a daily thing for me from morning till blackout, and that was just pure escapism. But it was building more and more problems to me. And as soon as I got sober, I started, dealing with all the issues in my life. And I think I've kind of got a good lid on them all now, and that's kind of
Yeah.
it. Yeah. So tell us about all your different ventures, Marissa. You've got
Oh my
so
gosh.
many kind of
It's so
strings to
much.
your
I know
bow.
it's
Yeah, yeah.
getting a little bit too much. No, first and foremost, No Girl Left Behind
Yeah.
is my main passion. And people often ask me the end game, and I just want to help people. I don't have an end game. I don't, I'm not trying to take over the world or anything. I just want to bring the event to cities where we can make an impact. I mean, no city is, off the list. We started in Canada and
Mm-hmm.
then we've launched in the United States. Things are growing rapidly. We're having a ton of fun. And then I'm on the board for Linfield University and I'm partnering with them in a lot of ways. I think it's probably going to come full circle in 2026 because right now we're just kind of figuring out the details. But I'd like to get Linfield and I are kind of working on partnering with the event because I work for their women in leadership program
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I run a female empowerment event. So it just seems like putting the
It's a
two
good.
together somehow
Yeah.
makes sense. So we're working on that. But again, that's probably going to take a while. And I still write for two magazines. So I just had an article come out a couple weeks ago in Brainz Magazine called Your Singular Existence. And
Mhm.
that one just talks about, again, respecting your crossroads with every person, whether good or bad. Like, say you meet someone and it's terrible, it's a relationship that puts you through 2 years of hell, and you've lost those 2 years, and it's like it was the most terrible interaction ever. Maybe 5 or 10 years later, you'll figure out that there was a reason you went through that. You needed to learn something about yourself,
Okay.
right? So
Yeah, yeah.
in your singular existence, I just talk about understanding that every crossroads with every human being. And I go into it like deeper detail because I like to go into like deep thought leadership. So what I speak to in the article is when you understand how rare it is that we exist, like our DNA. In
Hmm.
fact, so interesting, not to go off subject,
No,
but
no, no. It's
I've
cool.
never thought about my biological dad. And I ran into someone through my career recently that offered to kind of tap into it.
Yeah.
And she found so much about me. Like I'm half British. I just found that out last week.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so exciting.
Do you know?
I'm
Do you know
learning so much.
whereabouts? Do you know? Because Britain,
I
Britain,
don't know yet. She's sent me like his parents, like my great grandparents, like their death certificates, like where they came from, the boat they came in on, pictures of them. Because I have his real name and where he was born and a couple of his ancestors' names. And so I
uh-huh.
was able to get that. And she's connected to all these like family tree services across the globe where you can connect with people. And she found like their paperwork from when they migrated here, some of their and World War II enlistment certificates,
Oh,
and oh,
wow.
it's been so fun. And so I've ordered a DNA kit. It's going to be here
Ah,
like this week.
I did mine.
I
I
know
did
I'm
mine
getting way
last
into it.
year.
Oh, you did?
I did mine last year, and like I think because I've got a friend who's an American as well, but hers was all like she knew she had Italian ancestry, so there was lots of that, but then there was French, and I think there was bits of Irish in there as well. I mean, mine is when you're from the United Kingdom, it's not so exciting because like being Scottish, my ancestry is mostly Scottish. Do you know what I mean? But if you're from America,
Mhm.
obviously
Yeah, you have no
unless you're
idea.
Native
Yeah.
American, you're gonna be from elsewhere, and that's the exciting
Mhm.
part. Yeah. I mean, I've got some
Yeah. Oh.
Norwegian and Swedish, so I'm kind of part Viking, part Scottish, so it's cool. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know on my mom's side, like my grandma was Slovenian and like Czechoslovakian, and like I'm sure a bunch of other things I'll find out shortly. But I
Mm.
never really knew a lot about my biological side on my paternal side. So that was really exciting. But in your singular existence, I talk about the how miraculous it is that each person exists because like so many people had to undergo so many things of so many generations, right, for you to be here. So once you really look at it from that perspective, it's a miracle that anyone is here. So the fact that you're crossing paths with them is a whole nother miracle. So
Hmm.
whether it's good or bad, just respect that, respect them, respect the time in front of them, even if it's a bad interaction. There's a reason that you put them in front of you. They are a miracle of existence in themselves, and so are you. And so the fact that your paths might cross is just completely like, the universe telling you what I mean. It's what I talk about in at the end is a quote that says, I have to think here. You can, what is it? You can't control the roller coaster that is life, right? So you can't control who comes in front of your path. The universe is going to put them there. You can't control the roller coaster that is life. But if you can always see the track in your mind, it makes the journey extraordinary. So I know that I don't know what life is going to throw at me, but
Hmm.
I always know where I'm headed. So I just consider them the universe's punches. In fact, a real example of
Love
that, of
that.
how I look at the
Yeah.
silver lining. Um, I have 4 kids, and 2 of them are very ill right now. In fact, I'm surprised they haven't opened that door. In the last 7 days, we've had like the flu and ear infections and
Oh
pink eye.
no.
I mean, we're getting a run for it.
Yeah.
Um, but I was just telling someone, a couple people, I'm just very grateful that I'm getting life's punches dealt
Hmm.
with before I travel and I start doing big event season, right?
Yeah.
So I'm looking at it as here's life's punches. Here's the roller coaster that I cannot control. I cannot control that they got these viruses, but what I can do is be grateful for something in the experience. And so I thought, what can I be grateful for? Okay, I can be grateful that this didn't happen while I was out of town,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? I can be
Yeah.
because I mean, imagine if they were sick and mom was traveling.
Oh
That
yeah,
would be detrimental,
they want their mama. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I'm able to take everything that happens to me and look at it as, okay, I can see the track in my mind. This is just the universe throwing me some punches. And
Hmm.
all I have to do is dodge the punches, keep my mind on the track, and everything will be okay, right? And so that's what I talk about in your singular existence is just knowing where you're headed and knowing that everything that's put in front of you is just the universe's way of stretching you and growing you and guiding you and getting you to the mental capacity where you need to be to level up,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And I've just, so I look at bad things that happen to me now, not even, I wouldn't call them bad things, but life's punches.
Yeah.
The universe kind of giving you a run for your money. And sometimes it's the person on the other end of the customer service line. I mean, there's always something getting in the way. But rather than complain about it, I've been around people that complain and I do it too. I just went through something with like a billing department and I was blasting negativity to everyone I know about the company and how awful of an experience I had.
Yeah.
And I kept having more and more bad experiences with them. And then I finally went, if I stop talking shit, maybe
Yeah.
I'll stop getting shit. Maybe if I start just appreciating the fact that I was able to use their service, that I live in a country where I'm able to get those kinds of services and I'm grateful for something, maybe I'll stop having a bad experience. And you know what? It worked.
Yeah.
So I just have learned. So anyway, back to the main thing. That was the article in Brainz, and then I've got an article coming out in Expert Profile magazine. That one's a global magazine. Um, what are we? May? No, we're in March. I believe April. April is
Okay.
when that one comes out. And that one again is kind of just another web of that same type of belief. I think that one is about power. It's titled The Power of Perspective. Oh yeah, I have a thing right here. The Power of Perspective. And so that one again is just speaking about how the way you look at everything that happens to you,
Yeah.
I mean, I think me dealing with what happened to me when I was 17, just really getting down to a very vulnerable level at writing it out for the book and thinking about it and remembering it, has really helped me come to terms with like, okay, now I can look at everything through a different
Hmm.
lens and be grateful for everything that's happened and is going to happen,
Yeah.
you know?
Because you're able to live through it again and kind of, put it into perspective, as you say, and deal with it. You probably wouldn't have been able to do
Yeah.
that, 10, 15, 20 years ago. But now looking at it with fresh eyes, it's like, I'm in a better place so I can deal with that.
Yeah, I'm not
And
in a drunken haze,
yeah,
So,
exactly. Because you'd have been
now
like,
I have.
you might have
Yeah.
been trying to go through it again, living it, and then if you're in a drunken haze, you're not giving it your full focus, so you're just kind of like, well, we'll deal with that later. And no, those
And you're always
articles
looking
sound
for the next
amazing.
party. Like you said, you're always looking for the next party.
Exactly. And that's the thing. I don't know if you've ever read The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. It's an amazing book, and it's all about kind of, how when we kind of um like resonate positivity out into the universe, it comes back on us. So it's exactly kind of similar to what you're saying. And in the same stretch, we don't know what everyone's going through every day, So if you're
Yeah.
rude to someone in the supermarket, if they're rude to you and then you give them something back, you don't know what they're dealing with, what they're what's made them be like that. And okay, they might just be a horrible person, but let's be honest, most people are good and decent people. They're just going through some bad things at the time, and life's hard. So I always try and remember like that I went through some tough times and people weren't always great to me at the time, but they didn't know what I was going through. So, it's about forgiving them for that and being remembering, to what other people are going through as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I like what you just said about the way people were to you and they didn't know what you were going through and you said you've forgiven them because I've got a lot of people in my life that
Mm.
um, weren't the greatest, but I don't think I've forgiven them, if that makes sense. But
I
I
know
like
what
what
you
you
mean,
said.
and there are certain people because I know through my 12 steps, it's all about forgiving people for this and all that, and I can't remember the exact step, but it's there are certain people in my past that I have no interest in forgiving them. I
Okay.
don't.
I was like,
Yeah, yeah,
wait a second, because I was thinking like, gosh, there's some people that yeah, I don't know.
yeah.
But I
I
think
don't think you have to
that's a
forgive
big thing.
everyone.
Like I need to get there, I need to get to a place where I forgive them because I like what you said. They didn't know what I was going through, and I didn't know what they were going through. So
Yeah.
I should look at it from a new perspective and practice some forgiveness. I
Well,
like that.
it is good, but as I say, it's only reserved for certain people. There are some people that knew what I was going through and still did some pretty shitty things to me. So, yeah, they're not on my list of forgiveness. And I don't know if that makes me a bad person, but I don't think you should forgive every single person. But I don't know. Maybe I'll get to that at some point. What do you know? Yeah, I don't get any. There's not like I don't get sleep over it. I don't think about that person, and it doesn't cause me any trouble in my life. I'm not still there because what is
Yeah,
it? Someone said resentment is like drinking a vial of poison and expecting everyone else in the room to fall down dead. The only person you're hurting yourself is yourself with resentment.
that's a good
That's
way to put it.
you're not if you're like, oh, this person, they're not affected by it. So these people they don't bother
Yeah,
me in my life. My life is amazing now since I've given up drinking, and it's just given up one thing. So would
yeah.
you say, I always ask my guests this, do you think that alcohol still has a place in our society?
Gosh, that's a hard one. Mm.
And there's
I
no
just
right
feel
or
like
wrong
there's
answer,
well,
obviously.
I just feel like there's other I mean, the whole reason that alcohol is what it is the money, right? I mean, the marketing, the
Yeah.
money that companies can make off of it. You just follow the dollar. Um, but as far as like humankind and humanity, uh, there's other ways to relax. And even now there's like new teas and
I mean,
I haven't
kombucha is
tried
great. I love
mushroom tea.
kombucha.
But like they make like mushroom tea or something that they
Yeah.
say give you kind of the similar effects of feeling buzzed, but it's not poison, it's organic. And I'm not trying to say that I'm promoting it. I don't think I've ever tried it, but
No.
I just know that there's safer ways to get a buzz
Yeah.
than alcohol and
No, and
poison.
I get that. There's a great doctor who used to work for the government. He's called Professor David Nutt over here in the UK, and he's I can't remember the name of it, but I know what you're talking about, and he's
Yeah,
definitely championing it. But I'm at this point
I
where I'm
just
like,
don't know.
do I want to
Like,
get a buzz on?
right?
I don't know if I want to get a buzz
I
on
don't know
anymore.
if it seems realistic. Like, I don't think there's a place for it, but it doesn't seem realistic that it'll ever go away.
No.
I feel like imagining that it would, that there's no place for it is unrealistic and instead just kind of like I tell people all the time like I've got 4 kids and I don't think that they're never ever ever going to touch alcohol, right? Like they're teenagers, they're going to be teenagers, some of them and or the younger ones.
Mhm.
They're going to go through stages, and I want them to be educated,
Hmm.
and I want them to see what mom went through
Yeah.
and understand that they can make up their own decision on alcohol, because a lot of people, I guess it's hard to say that there's no place for it. Because I've never been asked that, because I do feel like there's no place for it. I feel like the whole world would be so much better if there was no alcohol. Like, think of how much people would be thriving. Uh, but it's not reality because it makes too much money for big corporations.
And that's the thing, that's the madness in it, because it like, and I always compare it to the tobacco industry, like if we go back 10, 15 years ago, like big tobacco was still, it was kind of in its death throes. And don't get me wrong, I know that big tobacco is still out there and it's still making absolute, shit ton of money. But smoking has definitely become, and
Hmm.
well, I'm not
Yeah, they
living
don't
in the
market it the way
US.
they used to at
They're not
all.
they're not allowed to. And here especially, like smoking, I don't remember the last time I saw someone walking down the street, smoking a cigarette. Whereas I mean, I used to be a smoker, and it was, I used to get annoyed when they brought in the smoking ban in pubs, so you couldn't smoke in the smoking area. The designated smoking area literally had a pillar in between that and where people were eating their food. So of course the ban should have been brought in years ago. But
Yeah,
smoking has now become like you're a bit of a pariah
taboo.
if you smoke, yeah. And I think that
I feel like
alcohol,
alcohol's there.
it's going to start going that way. And I think a lot of people, because I'm,
There's things happening
yeah,
that
yeah,
are
there is
making it like
movement.
yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
And well, I was just going to say, I'm a stepfather to a 14, 12, and an 8-year-old. And, I mean, there's no, I was 14 when I started smoking, and I'm sure there's kids at their school, but it's mostly vaping that they do, all these single-use vapes. But they're not, I think kids today, they don't seem to be doing the binge drinking at the park, or, as
Yeah.
much as like we did in our kind of early teens and things, because and my one of my reasoning I think behind that is because everything's on video now. So I like,
Mhm.
I've said to a few people, if there was video evidence of some of the stupid stuff that I did back when I was drinking when my teen years, that would have put me off drinking for life. But there's no record of it. But nowadays I think kids are they're very conscious of how they look and how they're perceived on social media. So they're very probably careful that if they do have a drink and they realize, well, I don't like to be out of control because I don't know what's going to be filmed and how people are going to perceive me. So that could be a kind of reasoning behind why a lot of youngsters don't seem, and the health implications as well, because they do their research. They're always on Google, so they're finding out way before we even had an idea that I didn't know that alcohol was bad for you. I just thought, yeah, maybe if you drank until you were 70, you'd get cirrhosis of the liver. But that's not the case. There's people in their 30s getting cirrhosis.
Well,
Um,
that's what I was just gonna say is I feel like there's more things happening that are pushing the movement to where it will be perceived kind of the same way the tobacco industry is. Like,
yeah.
there was just that celebrity that passed away, and that was shocking to me because she's I can't remember her. It's Michelle something, but she was on Gossip Girl. But
Oh, yeah, she was on Buffy as
yeah, no
well.
one
Here,
even
I'm
knew she had a
mentioning Buffy
problem.
again.
And she
Yeah.
was 39 and
Yeah.
had a liver transplant because of her alcoholism.
Yeah.
I mean, so I think things like that coming to the light, and like, people seeing that, like, here's someone that's uber famous and wealthy, but still alcohol got to her,
Yeah.
and ruined her life. And so I think, and like you said, she's not 80 years old and drank her whole life. Like, she
Hmm.
was 39 years old.
Yeah.
And I think I was just talking to my husband about there, maybe someone, but like the way that they talk about, really hard drugs, how they can just turn you into a zombie in a
Mhm.
month. Like, you just get addicted and they take control of your life. I wish we would talk about alcohol like that and explain that it doesn't happen rapidly, but it
Mhm.
happens.
Yeah.
Because like we talk about don't do drugs and stay away from drugs and just say no, but alcohol's never in that mix when we talk like that, like the DARE program that we had when we were younger.
Yeah.
But if they would just explain to young kids that, like, maybe it's not going to take your life in a week like fentanyl,
Hmm.
um, but do it every day for long enough and it's going to take everything from you and eventually take your life.
Yeah.
Like, why aren't we explaining that it's still a drug? It's still taking things away from you. It's just not as rapid as the ones that we're warning kids about. So even if it's a slow progression, we should still be warning them,
Yeah.
of
They
what can happen.
they still do the whole drugs and alcohol, whereas alcohol is a drug. And many people say if it was discovered today, it would be up there with the class A's. They would be like,
Yeah,
this is a
I've heard that.
ridiculously
Yeah, they'd be like, what
dangerous.
is this?
Yeah, this is such a dangerous drug. Okay, like if you're high on cocaine, you can walk down the street, okay, you might be a little bit blah, 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 and a bit wired, but you're walking down the street, you're not stumbling and falling over. Whereas you see someone with alcohol and they can't even stand up most of the time. And it's a completely different drug, but it is a drug and it's ruining lives, as you say, it's
Yeah, I
insane.
think there's a movement for sure. I
Mhm.
mean, just since I quit drinking, the non-alcoholic sections in grocery stores, which I never would have noticed,
Yeah.
but I quit drinking a little over 2 years ago. And when I first quit, there would be like two or three options, and then there
Mhm.
was a shelf, and then 6 months later there was two shelves. And then I remember one day I was in Target and an entire end cap was dedicated to non-alcoholic selections, and I was like, this is effing cool. I mean, like, it's trending. Like more and more if companies like that are seeing that they can make money off of it and there's a margin off of it, right? There's a target market out there that wants it and it's viable. That tells me that society is seeing that there's a movement behind it because
Yeah.
now we're seeing, and in fact, so if it started with that end cap, and then now when I go to my local Target, there's like an entire half section. It's
Mhm.
just as big as the non or as the alcoholic section. There's now just as big of a non-alcoholic section. And that for me was like, okay, we're making movement, you
Yeah.
know?
There's a
There's a
huge shift.
definite change happening just in the last couple years, you know?
Yeah. And I think
Um,
I think I don't know whether it's connected to COVID or whether this was going to happen anyway, but you're right, there has been this definite shift in people's attitudes. And like even when I first got sober, which was 2020, and you say to a few people, "Oh, I've quit drinking." And for the people that knew I had an issue, that wasn't a problem to them. But it was like when I spoke to people that didn't know my situation, I'd say, "Oh, I don't drink," and they'd be like, "Oh, why?" And they'd be like, "Can't you have one?" And there'd be all these questions. But now it's like when you say to people you're sober, people are like, "Oh, yeah, cool." They're not
yeah,
really that bothered whether you were a raging alcoholic or if you've just decided to stop drinking. It's totally acceptable now. I mean, there's still obviously the few people that'll be like, "Oh, what?
yeah.
Just
But
go
I
on,
talk
have
about
one."
that. Yeah, because I remember when I was a kid, a family friend had gone sober, and I think I was like maybe 10 or 11 or 12, something like that. But I
Mhm.
remember when she announced it and like I was in the room with the adults, it was weird. I looked at her as very weird. I thought there was something wrong with her.
Yeah,
Um, and all my life I thought there was something wrong with her. And and that was my big fear, is that I was going to look like the clown I saw her as, like the
yeah.
weirdo.
The
Like, why do you
weirdo,
have a
the
problem?
outsider.
Why are
Like,
you a weirdo? Why don't you drink?
why don't you drink?
Um, yeah, and so it took, a few months of being sober, to really realize that there is a change in the perception of how people view sober people. Like, I- they're not weirdos, they're just people that want to live at full capacity and live their best lives. And even more so, I don't have the shame anymore, like I talk about this, but where, because I keep non-alcoholic options in my fridge. I don't drink them
Mhm.
every day, but if I want one, they're there,
Yeah,
all
yeah, yeah,
different kinds.
same. Yeah.
But when you go and you stock up a grocery cart with non-alcoholic options, for a while there was a fear that I looked like a psycho, but I'm at a point now where I proudly don't give a shit. I'm
Yeah.
like, yes, this
But
is all
this
my
is the
non-alcoholic
weird,
stuff because, I'm trying to be a better human being.
yeah, but this is the weird kind of stigma that is like it's a completely misplaced stigma because like
Right?
you're saying you're walking down the aisles with your shopping cart full of non-alcoholic stuff, and then there might be someone 10 paces behind you with their shopping cart filled with like all the strongest lager
Right, but I'm the
beers.
weirdo
Yeah, you're the weirdo, but they've got a shopping cart full of
full of
like strong
poison
drugs. Yeah, it's absolutely bonkers. But we're
because
breaking down
society
the
has,
stigma,
yeah,
and we're getting society. So it's, and I think this is it, because it's called Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, I never went there. I went to Narcotics Anonymous because alcohol's a drug. But it's anonymous. Why is it anonymous? I don't want to be anonymous. I want to tell people, look, do you know what? I had a problem and I overcame that problem and now I'm living my best
it's
life.
because it was looked at as shameful,
Yeah. Yeah.
like don't, it's all private, closed, like don't tell anyone who you saw there. I went to one AA meeting once, but
Yeah.
it was years before I quit drinking.
Yeah.
Um, and then I never went to any AA again. My AA was my adult coloring books and my kombucha every
And
day.
that worked for you. And that's the thing,
It
like,
did, yeah.
when I was in the fellowship and they were like, oh, if you miss a meeting, you're going to relapse and you need to be doing this for the rest of your life and blah, 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 and all that. And I went into that and it worked for me for my first year because I
Hmm.
loved the militancy of it and it kept me grounded and focused. And then I started going, do you know what? I want to start living my life away from this constant fear of relapse if I don't go to a meeting. And because one of the times we couldn't get to a meeting because of COVID, and I was like, I don't want to be in a situation where if I don't get to a meeting, I'm going to relapse. So I was like, I stopped believing that. And I was like, no, no, I can do this
For you.
on my own. And that's the thing. Like, recovery is all about an individual
Yeah, it's
journey.
different for everyone.
It's
For
so
me,
different.
like I went from being addicted to drinking after work, to forcing myself to be addicted to finish a page in an adult coloring book just to keep my mind busy. And then once I didn't need that anymore, I kind of went into like an addiction of like further education and professional ventures and things like that. But I keep myself so busy. It's
Hmm.
it's just the way I function, and
Yeah.
I don't like to be stagnant or bored. Not in fear that I'll pick up a drink, but I mean, boredom can be an evil enemy,
Yeah.
for so many people. I had a sister um that gosh, I wish, sorry, my cat is hang
That's
on a
okay.
sec.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll just wait. It's okay. Um But um, my sister got into some dark places and she passed away at the age, oh gosh, she would have been 8 years older than me, so 36. She would have been 44.
Oh,
Don't quote. But she passed away on my 36th birthday.
oh,
And I often think of, if she lived closer to me and we could have done things together. And because I just feel like when people, don't have a lot of things taking up their time, they find bad, like when I ran away, I mean, when you're
fill the
not
void,
something, yeah, like I just feel like if you keep yourself busy with something that can take up your attention, especially if you have an addictive personality, like
Yeah.
find a hobby,
Yeah. Find
like
something
train for
worthwhile.
a marathon or pick
Yeah.
up an instrument, or I mean there's so many other things. Hang on a sec.
Yeah. No, yeah. Go and get the cat. I mean, I've got one that's sat outside meowing
Shut
at
my
me,
door
but
like a psycho and it's loud and annoying.
yeah.
It's
I
my fat
I've got two myself, and they're out at the moment. I think one was trying to get in, but it's fine.
Yeah,
I'll tell
she'll
you a
never
funny
stop
story.
crashing until I let her
My mum, a few years ago, this was about 10, maybe 10, 15 years ago, and my mum's friend had told her about um like adult coloring books. So she was like, I think she was, I think she'd been not well or something, and she needed something to kind of keep her mind occupied and all that. So her friend sent her these coloring books. So she wanted to repay the favor, or she, no, she wanted to get more herself. So she went on Amazon and she typed in adult coloring books. Now, the books that came were, and I can see from your face, they were,
That's
she
so
showed me
funny.
them. They were, and I was just like,
I can
they're,
only imagine, right? When you said it, I already knew.
these are
That's so,
definitely adult coloring in books that she got.
oh, that's
So I don't know if
hilarious.
she got any way with coloring those ones in. But yeah, Marissa, I'm just gonna, I like to keep these to just, an hour and a half ish. But
Yeah.
what would you say to anyone? What advice would you give to anyone that was kind of maybe, sober curious or early days of recovery? And what kind of advice would you give them to keep going?
I think what I like to tell people is we all have a version of ourselves in our head that we know that we can be. And if you have those thoughts, if you know that there's a better version of you out there, I feel like eventually the voice and the visions get loud enough that something makes you make that decision. And it doesn't have to be a rock bottom, but if you know there's a better version of you out there
Mhm.
without alcohol, sorry, um, you know, don't lose sight of it. Like literally hold on to that vision of yourself every day. And eventually the universe will put something in front of your path that will make you go, mm-hmm, it's time. It is time. You know, I think give yourself grace. You know, if you're trying to quit and you say, okay, today I'm not going to drink, and then you come home and you have a glass of wine, don't think you're the most horrible person in the world. You
Mhm.
know, we all did it. I did it for like 10 years, like
Mhm.
literally. I mean, don't beat yourself up for not being able to stop something because it's a drug and it's addictive and it's not your fault. But don't ever lose sight of the fact that you can be better. There is a better life out there, and eventually something will come in front of your path. You will find the freedom. You just have to never give up on that vision. And don't, like, because I talk to people that are trying to quit and then they get real down on themselves and they'll DM me and, you know, I'm worthless and I can't do it and I just can't stop drinking. But okay, go to bed tonight and wake up tomorrow with that vision of yourself. And even if you drink today, keep that vision in your head, right? Keep
Yeah,
that higher version of yourself in your head at all times. Never, ever let it out of your mind. And eventually it comes.
I
I
love
think
that.
for me, it's a mental thing.
Yeah.
Because I think even what I talk about a lot is even when I was in really bad places, like basements of operations buildings and raids and jail cells, I never stopped envisioning that version of myself that I am today. Like
Mhm.
even in elementary school, I saw this version of myself and I never stopped looking for her, you know?
Yeah. Wow. That's very powerful. I love that, Marissa. Thank you so much. Yeah,
Yeah, thank
that's
you for having me. This was so fun.
great.
We have to do it again.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. I love getting people's stories, but I want to kind of go back and interview people. Not interview because it's not an interview. It's have a conversation with someone
Yeah,
again to see, where they're at and how your
yeah, for
ventures are
sure.
going. So yeah, I'd
Yeah, who
love
knows
to.
where I'll be in a year.
Well,
Yeah,
exactly. Where will we all be in a year? I mean, I love it. It's
right?
exciting. This is such a
Yeah,
good, I'll say it again. It's my life has never been this good, and all I did was give up one thing, and that's it.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 100%. That's a great message because that's true. Same. I gave up one thing and my life completely changed. We can talk about that on a whole nother podcast because
Oh,
I have a whole
absolutely.
nother feel about that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much today, Marissa, for joining me. And yeah, well, this will be. I'll put all your details in the show notes. Any details that you want to send through about your ventures as well, we'll get all of those on there so that people can see it. And we'll probably be putting this out probably in about 2 or 3 weeks. So yeah, so we've got a few for you, but yeah, we're gonna get it out there soon. And I know that it's gonna help so many people. So yeah, thank you for coming on today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you
You
so
take
much.
care. Cheers. Bye bye. Bye bye. So yeah, wow, incredible story from Marissa. Um, as I say, I was not expecting that. Just kind of carnage that she went through at 19, and you know, like that situation. Although it did have a long lasting effect on her life, could have been so much different. But kudos to Marissa for finding the strength, and I guess the people around her that gave her support, those characters that the universe sent into her life to, change things around and, get her to be the person that she is today. Obviously, she did have those kind of issues that crept up again during COVID. COVID does have a lot to answer for, and yeah, but she's managed to get through it, and she's doing all these amazing things for, empowering women, and yeah. So I'm gonna put all the details in the show notes. So if you want to, kind of delve into Marissa's working life and all the kind of events and things she does in the US, then just look up the show notes. And yeah, but other than that, I'll see you guys next week. Thanks for listening. Bye bye.